You're watching Pyro Media Network. Hello, Pyro Media family. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience with us is fruitful. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. And we do hope you consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Conversations with Clergy. I'm your boy, Dr. Donta Morrison, and I'm excited to have you back in the building with me one more again. Do I sound congested? Yes, I do. And why do I sound congested? Because this is my first time in my 52 years on Earth ever having allergies or some kind of allergy attack. So I sound congested, but I feel just fine, all right? Just so you know. So no, it's not COVID. It is not COVID. Even though we are talking about COVID on today, this is not COVID. I'm excited for today's conversation because it is going to further educate us on science and research and medical stuff and all that, because we don't talk about it enough within communities of color. And I want us all to be on the same playing field when it comes to the knowledge and education. So do me a favor, if you're watching for the first time or the next time, go ahead and hit that share button. Go ahead and share it, invite, like, all that kind of stuff, because we want to always be in the know when it comes to our health. So listen, Conversations with Clergy is a show that I love doing because I talk about, well, for one, I'm clergy, you're having a conversation with me, but to talk about how we can best improve our health outcomes within our communities, either with the help of the church or without the help of the church, but the church got to be in there somewhere. And just for those that don't know, Conversation with Clergy is supported by monies from the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, and the HVTN is the world's largest publicly funded international collaboration facilitating the evaluation of vaccines to prevent HIV/AIDS. The HVTN also helps advance the field of vaccinology, social and behavioral sciences, statistics, and immunology, as well as tuberculosis and COVID-19 vaccines. I know I said a mouthful, and that's a lot, but for more information, please visit the HVTN by going to www.hvtn.org. Also, shout out to Church One Ministries. Church One Ministries is also in the background helping Conversations with Clergy elevate to the next level. Church One is located in Long Beach, 700 East 70th Street, Long Beach, California, 90805. And they are constantly in the fight to make sure that everyone knows about, well, we all know about COVID, but make sure they have access to COVID-19 testing and is always in the loop when it comes to getting vaccinated and whatnot. If you are someone you know is in the Long Beach area and you need an at-home COVID test, you don't have the money to get one, don't know where to go and get one, reach out to Church One. We have a bevy of at-home COVID test kits just for the community. So please make sure to take part in that. All right. So I don't want to belabor my chitter chatter. I want to get my guest on today because this guy is, listen, I respect him highly. He's been on the show before, but he's coming back for another round of conversation dialogue to just help us further unpack the importance of vaccine research, what vaccine research means to communities of color, how we can get more involved in vaccine research and what have you. So without further ado, please welcome back to Conversations with Clergy, soon to be one day, very soon. I'm going to speak into existence, but not quite yet. Dr. almost Lewis Shackelford. It's gonna happen, Lewis. It's gonna happen.
Listen, there's gonna be a Dr. Shackelford in this house. I believe it. It may not be me. It may be my wife before I get
But it's gonna happen.
It's definitely gonna happen. It's so great to see you, Donta. It's so great to be here, man.
Again. Same here. It's always good to have a conversation with you. So for those that may not know, Lewis Shackelford is the Director of External Relations at the HVTN. This brother has a lot on his plate, and he is doing a lot of phenomenal work. So Lewis, let's just dive into this because we have a long way to go in a short amount of time to get here. So just the first question that I have for you is specifically to let the people know, what is the HVTN? What does the HVTN do?
So the HVTN is one of 4 NIH-funded HIV research networks. And as the name implies, we are the network that is devoted to developing a safe and effective HIV vaccine. And so this would be a preventative vaccine, somewhat like what we have on the COVID side of things, that would prevent the spread of HIV from one person to the other.
I love it. I love it. How long has the HVTN been in existence?
So that's a good question. Actually, it started around the year 2000. So with our founder and still current leader, Dr. Larry Corey. So we're coming up on 25 years of the HVTN, which is going to be a big thing for us next year. So really excited about that.
Definitely, because I think that one thing about it is that when we think about just vaccines and all of that, of course, the HVTN, like you said, is fairly new in consideration of what all is going on. But vaccine research and vaccinology is not new. It has been around for quite some time. And it seems like COVID brought this resurgence of interest in vaccinology that we had not seen since, I would just say, chickenpox or way back when, COVID did something and brought a resurgence. So I have quite a few questions we're going to cover on tonight. Shout out to those who are watching. Kimberly Jenkins Irvin, I see you. Dana Dane, what's up, fam? Bam. What's up? Dr. Gaddis, how are you doing on tonight? How are you doing on tonight? So listen, so Kwame, what's the first question I have for Lewis? Let's just go into it. We got that. You broke that down for me. Let's do the second question. Here we go. Boom. Is COVID-19 still an issue?
That's a really good question. I say that any disease that is actively, harming people around the world, people in this country, COVID, we know, did the most damage to marginalized communities. So yeah, so it's still an issue. It may not be as big as an issue for society as much as it used to be, but we still want to recognize that for somebody who has a compromised immune system, for somebody who has some other complicating health issue, that it could be something that affects them in a very negative way, and it still is a killer. COVID is and always has been a killer, and so we always need to be mindful of it and take precautions against it. Nowadays, we have vaccines readily available. Those vaccines have been, for all the people who said vaccines have gone too fast and haven't been tested and all of this stuff, these vaccines have been out in the world for now 4 going on 5 years now. They've been taken by literally millions of people across the globe. I think it's time to just protect yourself. I mean, even if it's just missing a few days of work, I mean, why would you want to feel crummy when you don't have to?
I think how you said that, you would think that we have normalized the conversations about vaccine and got some familiarity within the community, especially communities of color, about we've debunked a lot of myths when it comes to vaccines, because I know when the COVID vaccine first came out, people ran opposite of it because they didn't want to get a third arm or 11th finger and all kind of stuff. And of course, we have proven that that is not the case. And I think that it's important that we begin to have these conversations, because some people still, they just shy away from learning about research and the science community and how all of this benefits us, even though when they get a headache, they still take a Tylenol, not understanding all of that is the same process. So,
and Donta, can I just add, for people of color, particularly Black people, one thing to recognize is that we were the innovators when it came to actually bringing vaccines or inoculations into the world. So for those who may not know that word, an inoculation is just exposing yourself to a very weakened form of a virus or a disease, so your body can kind of build a defense against it. And so that's something that was brought into the United States by enslaved folks from Africa. It was something that they brought to the attention of white scientists here, and it's something that they use to protect themselves. So, the roots of how using inoculation, and this is well documented stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hotepping.
Right.
This is well documented. The name escapes me of the enslaved person that brought it to the attention of this white guy. But it was something actually white people were resistant to do because it came from a Black person, until they realized how many lives it saved when they inoculated themselves. So the origins, the vaccines that we have are much more sophisticated. We don't expose you, like from the HIV side, there's no HIV in the HIV vaccine candidate. So we're not exposing you to a weakened form of HIV. But the idea of inoculating yourself to protect yourself from a disease that is a killer came from people of African descent. So it's just something for us to keep in mind. Like these are things that came from us and that have been used for, over a century to keep people alive and well across the world.
Lewis, why is that not common knowledge?
Well, one, history is not viewed from the perspective of, marginalized populations, from oppressed people. So our contributions to science, our contributions to making the world a better place tend to be denigrated and downgraded just overall. But then when you move forward from that, you see all these medical atrocities that have taken place. The biggest one that comes up all the time is Tuskegee. Right. And we take that as the biggest, it's almost like it's the biggest imprint of science on the Black community that's been made in these past few the past few decades. And we kind of take that as a protective. We're a community that has been marginalized and that has been pushed around and oppressed for so long. I feel like we take in stuff like that because we need to protect ourselves and make sure the next generation knows, hey, look out for this, protect yourself from this. But we don't do as much to say, but look how much have we done, and look at something that we've done and we've given to the world that's made the world a better place. Let's make sure that we continue to benefit from it just as everybody else has.
I love that. I think that, how you broke that down, that was an aha moment for me. And I think because more persons of color, Black people specifically, are not really aware of the role we played in all of these medical advancements, and it's unfortunate that we shy away from so much, even though we are the innovators of way more than what we're given credit for. So thank you for shedding light on that, and hopefully that inspired someone that's watching that was like, well, wait a minute, so we've been in the mix of all of this. Let's not, like you said, let's not focus specifically on the Tuskegee experiment and look at the vastness of research that we have contributed to. So thank you for opening that door.
And just if I can make a last point, Tuskegee was about us not receiving treatment that we need, or a group of African-American individuals that were not receiving the proper treatment. Right. So it was the complete reverse of what we're seeing. It wasn't like giving them a vaccine and that vaccine being an experiment. It was there being a treatment to cure syphilis and then that treatment being withheld from them.
And that flips the whole ideology about it too. They didn't get nothing.
Right.
So it's like this is apples and oranges compared to COVID vaccines and whatnot. They did not get a vaccine. So I love that. I see Dr. Gass's question. We're going to ask that question later because I have something that ties in with that. So let's do the next question. How did COVID-19 impact vaccine research? Did it have an impact on it?
Oh, most certainly. It had a huge impact. First of all, it allowed us to use mRNA it allowed us to use mRNA or develop or deploy mRNA vaccines, which we hadn't done before. With that technology had been stored up, it was about to be used. If my memory serves me correctly, it was a technology that had been kind of in the waiting to be deployed for decades. It specifically is technology mRNA was a platform specifically designed for like this emergency situation where you have this emergent this virus that comes out of nowhere and we need to respond to it quickly. It was technology developed for that, as to my understanding. The first time they were thinking about utilizing it was actually in Zika. But Zika, that virus kind of came and died down on its own. And so by the time they got ready to deploy those type of vaccines, they didn't need to. So when COVID came along, it was the perfect time for them to utilize it. And it was the perfect type of virus. It's a coronavirus, meaning that it has these spikes, and those spikes are the same or very, very samey from virus to virus, even as they mutate or, create these different variants. So that created a nice, easy target that stays the same, that they can put in an mRNA vaccine and then create this vaccine that it can be deployed very quickly. So that showed us that we could do mRNA vaccines. We can do them at scale very quickly. It also showed us a lot about distribution of vaccines, how they're distributed. And on the community engagement side, where I work in research, it taught us a lot about what are the needs around education and knowledge building that we need, that has to happen for a vaccine to be equally distributed in populations and communities across the globe.
I love it. You know what? This is what I love, because you unpack it so eloquently, and you talk in a way that the people can be like, oh, okay, I get it. It's not way up here. It's real tangible. It's something we can understand. So I appreciate that. Let's do one more question before we go to commercial break. Where do we miss the mark in terms of vaccine education and awareness? Because, I know about it, you know about it, but the work of the HVTN, specifically the faith-based initiative, is to get the messaging out there to the masses. So where are we missing the mark?
I think we miss the mark when we don't update our knowledge. And as I said at the top of the show, a lot has changed. When we talk about types of inoculation, a vaccine is a type of inoculation. Again, an inoculation is just something, exposing yourself to something to help you help your body get ready to fight some sort of disease or virus. It used to be the case we used to actually use the disease. We used to use a very weak form of disease, or once upon a time, they used to actually expose you to the disease, because that's all they had back in the day when they started doing this stuff. We've gotten much more sophisticated where we're not exposing people to disease. We're showing them, pieces of a virus that have no ability to infect or harm anybody, but are enough so that it teaches our body to get ready to fight this thing that may be coming our way. So we're developing and advancing the science of vaccines very, very quickly, and a lot is being done. And so we need to keep up that knowledge and just not say, well, they're giving me a vaccine, they must be for HIV, they must be putting HIV inside.
Right.
Like, we need to continue to update our knowledge and not just say like, oh, I know what a vaccine is. It's just giving me the virus before I actually get it. It's not that.
And I heard that even with the flu, you're going to get the flu if you take the flu shot, and all that kind of stuff. And I think we need to have more of these conversations to debunk some of that learning that was passed down by people that have never gone to school. It's like we get a lot of stuff from people. It's like, where'd you get your degree from? It's like, how do you know this? Who told you that? And I think we need to start massaging these conversations so people don't feel shame for not knowing, but they can take what they have learned and now pay it forward. And I think that's so important. Shout out to Hope Giselle for watching. What's up, Hope? How are you doing? I love, respect, and appreciate you. So thank you so much, Hope, for tuning in. So listen, Lewis, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back. We're going to tackle the question that Dr. Gaddis asked about long COVID. And I think that's something that's really important to unpack right now, because some people that caught COVID, and I mean the real COVID, if COVID first came out, they're still dealing with the aftermath of that, their breathing and all that. So let's talk about that. And then a few more questions, then we're going to wrap it up. So Kwame, take us to commercial. Are you ready for enlightening conversations that transcend boundaries? Get ready for Conversations with Clergy, brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. In partnership with the world's largest publicly funded international collaboration, the HVTN is dedicated to evaluating vaccines to prevent HIV and COVID-19. But their impact doesn't stop there. The HVTN is at the forefront of advancing vaccinology, social and behavioral sciences, statistics, immunology, and even contributing to the research on tuberculosis and COVID-19 vaccines. By supporting Conversations with Clergy, the HVTN not only brings you thought-provoking discussions, but also contributes to the global effort to combat infectious diseases. Tune in, stay informed, and be a part of the change. Conversations with Clergy, supported by the HVTN, empowering conversations, empowering lives. Join us in this journey of knowledge, understanding, and progress. Conversations with Clergy, proudly brought to you by the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, because together we can make a difference.
Know that you can now catch the electrifying sounds of Bullet and Flight Radio anywhere you go? Yes, you heard it right. Tune in to the high-flying beats and soaring melodies by downloading the TuneIn app on your mobile device. Just search for Bullet and Flight Radio and hit play. It's that easy. And if you have a smart device like Alexa or Google, just say, "Hey Google," or "Alexa, play Bullet and Flight Radio on TuneIn." Experience the rush of adrenaline wherever you are. Listen to Bullet and Flight Radio on TuneIn using your Alexa or Google devices. Soaring through the skies has never sounded this good. Don't miss out on the ultimate musical journey. Tune in now to Bullet and Flight Radio on TuneIn and let the music take you on an unforgettable ride. Get ready to elevate your listening experience. Brought to you by Bullet and Flight Radio.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second half of Conversations with Clergy. I'm excited to have the discussion because, Lewis is unpacking a lot of stuff, and hopefully he's educating you, enlightening you, and making you be like, I need to study up more about vaccines. Lewis is doing a lot of work in the area of vaccine research and just making sure that we are doing our part as the HVTN faith-based initiative. So I'm part of the HVTN faith-based initiative, which is a group of spiritual leaders from across the country. We all come together and we think of ways to strategically start conversations about COVID-19, HIV within faith spaces that can really disseminate that information out to their communities. Hey, Bishop Bonnie, how are you doing on tonight? Thank you for tuning in. So the first half, we saw Lewis talked about basically what the HVTN is, how COVID shifted the landscape of vaccine research, and also the role of people of color played when it comes to just making sure we have all these advancements in science and medicine. So that was important information to know. So this second half, we're going to talk about, what's going on with COVID. So let's just get this question out the way. So earlier, Dr. Bambi Gaddis asked, what is the state of HVTN research right now around the impact of long COVID? So let's talk about HVTN is researching COVID, but what's good, Lewis? What's going on with long COVID? Because folks are still wheezing and can't breathe and all that. And they caught COVID in 2019, 2020, 2021. So what's happening? What's going on?
So the HVTN doesn't do a ton of research around long COVID. I think we have a few small studies. We may have a few small studies devoted to some area of long COVID. But our major focus is coming up with therapeutics or treatments for COVID-19. So I personally don't have a lot to say in that area. Again, not a doctor yet. But, it's just something to keep in mind that, first of all, long COVID is real, that this is something that affects a significant amount of people who were infected with COVID-19. And so just being mindful of that, it shows up in many different ways. Sometimes it shows up as brain fog. Sometimes it shows up as diminished lung capacity, chronic fatigue, all sorts of things. So we just need to be understanding that this is something that many of folks in our community are dealing with, and maybe even make it more of normalize it in terms of it being something that people need to understand. Like if you've had COVID 2 years ago and you've never felt right since, it might not just be like just a thing in the back of your head. It might actually be that you're dealing with symptoms of long COVID. And so, seeing a doctor about that, going to professionals who understand what you're dealing with is really important, and understanding that it's still emerging. So we're still learning a lot, and it's an ongoing thing. But unfortunately, it's not my expertise, so I don't have a lot to share about long COVID.
And that's fine, because the good thing is we have Dr. Ulysses Burley, who would be more than happy to jump on a conversation with Clergy to talk about, long COVID, what COVID does to the body, because some people still don't really realize it, because a lot happened when COVID hit. We were not only were we trying to get water and toilet paper out the grocery store, we didn't have time to really unpack and really sit in what was going on from a health perspective. I know that when COVID hit, people were always asking, well, Dante, what is the side effects? What's the long-term effects? I'm like, we don't know what the long-term effects will be because we have not had it long-term. And I think a lot of people we're at the point where the dust is kind of settling, and we can do further, like you said, further research on where we are right now. To be honest, COVID-19 is still new, for all respects and purposes. It is very new. And a lot of things we're just not going to know within 5 years of onset. It's going to take some research. It's going to take some studies. It's going to take some conversations to really unpack what we should be looking for 10, 15, 20 years from now. So I'm not going to tell folks to be patient, but kind of like what Lewis said, if you are still, you just never bounce back from your bout with COVID. I had it twice. You know, I caught it twice and vaccinated and caught it twice. Thank God for the vaccine because I'm still here. But I think that there is some time that needs to happen before we realize what's going on. Hope Giselle said, in what ways has the experience and infrastructure developed through HVTN's HIV vaccine research been leveraged or adapted to address the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic? You can always count on Hope Giselle. Thank you, Hope. Take it away.
Hope is a heavy hitter. She's a heavy hitter.
I love that.
She don't show up to ask small questions. That's for sure. That is actually an amazing question. So the answer to that question is the COVID-19 Prevention Network. So when COVID was happening and the NIH and Fauci and all those folks were seeing like, we need to respond to this and we need to respond to this quickly, they got together all the folks that work in this vaccine area and biomedical interventions and things like that. That included the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, knowing that we have this infrastructure that's out and we're doing testing and evaluation of viable HIV vaccines. They brought us in and they formed a network with all these other government entities that respond to biomedical events like COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. And we formed a new network called the COVID-19 Prevention Network. And under the COVID-19 Prevention Network, we use the HVTN's protocol style. We use the HVTN's sites across the country. We use pretty much all of the infrastructure of the HVTN to build out studies very, very quickly so we can evaluate the COVID-19 vaccines that we had in the pipeline, like Moderna's vaccine, like Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. And so using our infrastructure, we were able to increase the amount of diversity in our COVID-19 trials and making sure that they were reflective of those that were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And so we're really proud of that. If you look at the numbers in terms of those that participated in COVID-VPN trials, you would see that they were much more diverse than what we see often in many vaccine trials just in general and just clinical trials in general. So we're very, very proud of that, and we were very happy to be a part of the response that got us the effective COVID vaccines that we still, in some ways, utilize today.
I love it. How was that? Was that good, Hope? Did we do it? Did he do it? Did he do
it? She gonna tell me if it wasn't.
Right. Trust me. There's another question that I have, and Kwame, I think it's probably one of the last questions that I sent. But if you can just throw them up there, I can see which ones we'll talk about, which ones you don't. So, because I know we're running out of time here. So there's let me see, what did I ask? I'm trying to think what order I did it in. What are the challenges with finding a vaccine for HIV? Yes, there we go, that one. Let's talk about that, because a lot of people who are living with HIV were kind of in their feels when a vaccine for COVID came out so quick. It's like COVID hit in January, y'all got a whole vaccine in November. You know, HIV/AIDS came out in the early 80s, and here we are 2024, and we still taking Biktarvy and Truvada every day. What's going on, Lewis? Why is there no cure or no vaccine for HIV yet? What is going on? Let the people know.
So I'm going to give you kind of a scientific answer, and I'm going to give you kind of a social justice answer.
All right.
So we're going to lead with the science. And the science is that the HIV vaccine is the HIV virus, is incredibly different from COVID-19. So as I mentioned earlier, you heard a lot during COVID-19 about spike protein, this thing on top of COVID-19. That stays the same. And COVID, just in general, is a very samey virus. Even though you hear about these different variants, those variants or mutations, they didn't create a virus that was radically different. The diversity in terms of the COVID-19 virus is just very, very low. It's a very, very samey virus. So we were able to make vaccines that were really easy at pinpointing one target, that being the spike protein, that really didn't change that much from one virus to another, even with different variants or mutations, and just target that, create great vaccines that could target that really well, and put it out there as quick as possible to save as many lives as possible. HIV is incredibly different. HIV, it has more diversity. There's more diversity in different variations of HIV than there is in diversity in human beings. So if you were to look at the diversity, like just the genetic diversity of human beings, we are much, much less diverse. And I think it's on an order of magnitude of 10 times less diverse in terms of, you'll find 10 times less diversity in human beings than you will find in HIV viruses. And that could be from going from the United States to Africa. You can be dealing with viruses that are just wildly different. And so it makes HIV a moving target. Okay. And it's constantly moving. And so we're getting better at homing in on the parts of HIV that are similar from virus to virus. Mm-hmm. And we're getting better at finding ways to test things that can combat those, can identify those samey parts of HIV and combat it on a kind of a global scale or a widespread scale. But it's a whole nother ball game when you go from HIV to COVID-19. But just think about COVID-19, because it's not changing and evolving in such a different way. It's remaining the same more so than not. It means that target just kind of moves around like this. Okay. And so it's easier to hit. Whereas HIV, because it's so different and there's so much diversity, it is all over the place. And so what works over here in Africa for this strain of HIV might not work over here in the United States. And there might be something else that we need in South America, because this strain might be a little bit different in South America. And so that's what we've been dealing with HIV for decades. And so that's what makes it a little bit harder.
So when we talk about, just to unpack it further, when you talk about the differences in HIV, and all of that, and then we talk about COVID, because with COVID, we was hearing all these different things, Delta, Gamma, Beta, Zeta, Sigma, Gamma, Rho, it was just, it was all this stuff about COVID. What is the difference between all those different variants of COVID-19 versus the diversity of what you're saying with HIV? Because I guess the one vaccine for COVID-19 can combat all those variants of COVID, but one vaccine for HIV could not combat all the different forms and shapes that HIV takes on. Is that correct in layman's terms?
Correct. We haven't found anything that can produce the same amount of coverage of HIV mutations that we found in terms of COVID-19 mutations. So when we talk about COVID-19, we talk about different variants. When we talk about HIV, you usually hear the term clade. And clade is essentially talking about the same thing, different variations of HIV. There's one clade for the United States, and usually North America kind of has one clade that appears the most here. And then there's another clade that appears the most in Africa. And there may be another one that appears in Europe. So we have different clades, and within each clade, we have various mutations and varieties of HIV virus. And so because it is so different across the world, and because it's always the key to understand about HIV is that it rapidly mutates on a scale way beyond COVID-19. So remember, it usually took, when you remember variants in COVID-19, mm-hmm. It usually took a few months before you got a new variant. Mm-hmm. We would kind of deal with one variant, and then you would hear like, oh, Omicron is coming.
Right.
And
right.
like, she on her fall, she on her way, and this and that. So think about that diversity and think about HIV. You might have the diversity that you had in the country with different variations of HIV, of COVID-19 throughout the country. You may have more variation of HIV in one person.
On one person.
You may have one in one person. Like HIV is a rapidly changing virus. So the amount of variation that you get is just on another level, and that's what gives us a hard time in terms of creating a virus that's effective across the board.
Wow. So listen, in one person, y'all stop having sex. If nobody has sex, we can eradicate HIV. Everybody stop having sex.
I would recommend
COVID. Everybody stay in the house.
Listen.
Don't talk. So listen, if everybody start having sex about 3 or 4 months, we can begin to do some things. So we got 4 minutes left. Anthony Brown just asked a question, and then Dr. Bambi asked a question. And thank you. Nope, not at all. We got prep and pep. Listen, I want to get these 2 questions in 4 minutes. So let's see what we can do. Anthony Brown made a statement that I've heard all the time. The reason there's no cure for HIV is there's too much money in HIV. So it's like, when we cure it, then all this money from the farmers and whatnot, all that money is gone. But there's a cure out there, and the rich people got the cure and all that. Can you debunk that in 30 seconds?
So that kind of goes to my social justice answer around why we don't have a vaccine for HIV. Understand that we threw all of our resources at COVID-19 all at one time. Every scientist that had anything to do with vaccinology and immunology focused on HIV, on COVID-19 at that time. So the amount of resources that we threw at COVID-19 were astronomical compared to what we have going on in the HIV space. The amount of focus that we had, just completely off the charts in terms of what we have in the HIV space. And then also understanding from a social justice standpoint, there's much less stigma about somebody having COVID-19 than there is about somebody having HIV. And that's just real. And until we overcome stigma, we're not going to have even if we have an effective HIV vaccine, it's not going to get to the people that we need the most or need it the most, with all the stigma that is rampant around HIV. So in terms of these things, I hear this all the time about, that pharmaceutical companies are just profiting off of the suffering of people too much for them to let HIV be cured. And I would say to that, they would make even more of a fortune if they could actually cure it. If Gilead came out with a cure for HIV or an effective vaccine that would completely and utterly get you from prevent you from getting HIV, that would be a vaccine that literally everybody in the world would be recommended to take, and they would make,
Trillions.
the amount of the amount of money they can make off of that would pale in comparison to the relatively small amount of people in the world that are living with HIV. So you're talking about a few million people that they're going to be profiting from because they're making, treatment to treat people living with HIV, versus billions of people that would be taking a vaccine that would prevent them from getting HIV.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
It would be in their best interest
I only got a minute left. Dr. Gaddis had a phenomenal question. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pin that question. Hold on, Kwame. Don't post it because we can't answer it. It's going to take more than a minute. I don't want to get fined. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have you and Dr. Burley come back on and talk about BNABs. Because BNABs is such a huge topic, such a huge unpacking. It would be disrespectful to the viewers to get a 30-second soundbite I want to really have a healthy discussion on it. So I'm going to have Pyro reach out to you and Dr. Burley to see what I can get you guys on to talk about BNABs, and then also elaborate the conversation on long COVID. So those who are watching that want that information about long COVID, they can get that as well. Is that okay, Dr. Gaddis? You know, Dr. Gaddis, Dr. Baby Gaddis is also an HVTN faith ambassador, and she does amazing work down south, specifically South Carolina area and whatnot. Allegedly, she makes these amazing desserts and she can cook. I don't know. I ain't had it yet, but she does some phenomenal stuff. So Google Dr. Bambi Gaddis when you can and just support her in all the work that she does. So we're going to have a part 2 to this conversation. We're going to take you further into the world of COVID-19 vaccine research and all that kind of stuff. So please just keep watching Conversations with Clergy. I appreciate the support and know that a part 2 is coming. So I almost said Dr. Shackelford. See, the Lord is speaking. The Lord is speaking. The Lord is speaking. So Lewis, this is your 30 seconds to just give your closing statements.
I think it's really important that we understand and recognize that there's been no major disease that we face in this world and overcome without an effective vaccine. And so understanding like that is the importance of having the HIV vaccine, that people are in this not to profit off of the suffering off of human beings, but to really just save lives, and understanding that we have plenty of medications that treat HIV. We have plenty of medications that prevent the spread of HIV, but something like a vaccine that is there, that gives you some long-term passive protection that you can count on without taking any pill, that's just there, and it helps your body fights this virus, is one of the major ways that we believe we can truly end HIV. And so that's our goal at the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. And to find out more, please visit helpendhiv.org, Help End HIV across all social media platforms. That's where you'll find me. That's where you'll find my colleagues at the HVTN. And if you want to get involved, that's also where you'll find a place to do so.
Thank you so much. Shout out to Lewis Shackelford, Director of External Relations at the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. Nothing but Black excellence right here in front of you. So if this is your first time watching, thank you so much for supporting Conversation with Clergy. If you are a routine viewer, welcome back. We'll be back next week with another Conversation with Clergy next Thursday. So just stay tuned. Great things are to come. Great things are in store. So thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and I will see you next time. Good night.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.